Hi, everybody. I'm going to start with a confession. When I was young, my mum used to take me into the bank branch with her, and they had these walls of forms for who knows what, but all these forms you had to fill in, and I would take one of each, and I would take them home, and I would spend many happy hours filling them in. I filled in bank forms for fun. Clearly, I was destined to be a revolutionary. I didn't really understand what those forms were about, but I knew that that was what finance was about, bureaucracy. And it's dull, it's boring, it's about terms and conditions and reading things carefully and very dull but important information. It's right, yeah? Well, I'm here to say it's not right, that finance is actually incredibly exciting. It controls our world, it controls our lives, it influences everything around us, but actually we own it. It's ours. It's ours to shape however we want to. And I don't think we realise that most of the time. A lot of the time, we don't actually realise what money is because we think, oh, it didn't fall out, great. We think this is money, this bit of paper. And we think this token is really what represents money and that this developed out of something called barter. You probably know the story. It's like, I have a goat, you have a bag of wheat. I want a bag of wheat, you want a goat. We swap, we're happy, everything's great. But, if I want a rabbit and you want a Big Mac, it's not going to work. So some bright spark invents currency, a medium of exchange that we can pass between us. That's a very common story, but actually there's very little historical evidence that that is how money started, because actually money developed out of a social system of obligation and responsibility, of trust, of relationships, of credit and debt. Money was a social thing way before we had shells or coins to represent it. Now, to give you a bit of an example of what I mean, a concrete representation, in 1970, in May, all the banks in Ireland shut because of an industrial dispute. And they didn't open again until November, 6 months later. Now, at first, people hoarded cash, because you would. But then something strange happened. People started exchanging checks. They couldn't cash these checks because there were no banks to cash them at. They exchanged them on trust. And that system carried on for the full 6 months to the extent that actually they had created £5 billion worth of new money in that 6 months. And that was based on trust. Now, you can probably see how that works with your neighbour or your family, but what about someone you don't know? How do you know whether to trust them or not? Well, actually, there was one person in the community who knew pretty much everyone and knew whether you could trust them or not. And that person became the person who endorsed, who circulated, who exchanged the bills. That person was the pub landlord. Ireland built £5 billion worth of money based on the pub. Now, this is all great, but what does it mean? Well, the reason I'm telling you this is because if this is just a symbol of a social creation, then actually so is the financial system. It is not some sort of immutable law of nature that we can't change. Humans created it. We created the entire system, all £20 trillion worth of it in the UK. It's ours, we made it, and we can change it. We don't have to serve it, it can serve us. And I stress this point because it's called financial services for a reason. It doesn't have to be this way, and yet right now some of our most wicked problems are underpinned by finance. So from 2013 to 2016, British banks put £115 billion worth of money into fossil fuels. Your average home in London in a year earns more than the average working household does in a year in price changes. 8 people own as much wealth as half of the world's population. You'll see more than 8 people on stage today, and that's half of the world's population have as much money. All of these things are the result of human decisions. They are not the result of some natural law that says finance has to profit the few at the expense of the many, or that we can't control the power and the direction of finance. And that's happening. So I lead an organisation called the Finance Innovation Lab, and we were started at the peak of the financial crisis. And we basically want to create a better financial system. And our vision is pretty simple. We think the financial system should serve people and planet. We think it should be democratic, controlled by all of us. We think it should be responsible, so directing money to the things we care about. We think it should be fair, so that it contributes to greater equality and inclusion, not less. And over the years, we have seen this happen. We have seen that money, and you've seen it today, can be directed to renewables, organic farming, microgeneration, small enterprises that help get unemployed people back into work, mental health, arts, culture, the things that we care about. And we've seen many organizations spring up and build this type of financial system, not just Triodos, but many other values-based banks, building societies, credit unions, community currencies, tech startups, responsible lenders. These organizations are out there. They are the reality. We just need to help them along the way. Now, if I were a politician, I would give you a neat 5-point plan as to how we create this change. Or I might get it engraved on a stone. That would be a good idea. I'm not going to, because that is not how systems change happens. It's not neat. You can't project manage it. It's really messy. It's chaotic. It ebbs and it flows. It resists and then it shifts. One person, one small act can have a huge impact. And so really, we have to all make the effort that we can to be part of that changing system. For the lab, our work is with the innovators, the people who are trying new ways to do finance, the Triodoses of the future. Last year, we supported 16 of them to build businesses that put people and planet first in finance. We've just appointed last week our cohort for this year, which are 13 entrepreneurs that are building genuinely new ways to make finance work for the most excluded people in society. That's what we do. We see these people out there, we find them building the system, they've taken on a very hard job, believe me, they need a lot of help. It's up to all of us to support them. So I've thought of 3 things we can all do, and one of them you're already doing, which is great, you've got that one ticked off. The first, and for me the most important, is to liberate our minds and liberate the minds of those around us, that finance is not an immutable natural law of the universe. It is ours. We made it, we can change it. I'm not saying it will be easy, but we can. And once we've done that, then we need to think about what that means in terms of the financial system. We need to start demanding that banks and other companies live up to their social responsibilities, because banks, just like any other company, they can only exist because we give them permission to do so. They are also human creations. And that permission needs to be conditional on them living up to their social responsibilities. So secondly, if you haven't already done so, I would strongly recommend with getting involved with some of the brilliant campaigns around finance and corporate behaviour, like Share Action's AGM Army, Positive Money's local groups, or a range of other things, that basically there are people out there demanding that these companies deliver on what they have pledged to do. Finally, and I think most importantly, as both citizens and customers, what we do with our money matters. And by banking with Triodos, you are not just channeling your money to things that you care about, you're actually helping to build the financial system of the future. And that's incredibly important, that you are telling the story of what finance should be like. Now, the other thing I remember from those trips to the bank with my mum were the pens on chains. Do they still have them? I haven't seen them for a while. There aren't many branches left. What does it say about how much the banks trust us that they chain the pens to the desk? Well, guess what? We don't trust the banks. So the agency Edelman has been for many years now surveying public trust across the world in a range of industries. And guess what? Financial services is consistently the least trusted sector. Now, there's been a lot of talk about, we need to regain trust in banking. And I don't disagree that trust needs to come back, but you only get trust from trustworthy behavior. So banks need to start making decisions with their head and their heart. They need to see that actually there is no fight between principles and profit. The two can happen at the same time, and we need to be telling them back. And right now, we don't have the sort of system where we can insulate ourselves from all the negative effects and all the negative behaviours, but we do have a voice and we should use it. So really, more than anything, I want to thank you, because you guys here are already part of that. You're already helping to build the financial system that we need. You're the pioneers, but there is plenty of room in this movement for everyone. So from all of us at the lab, I want to say thank you for being part of the revolution.